The Sunday Baroque podcast is made possible by WSHU and the Friends of Sunday Baroque. You can find out more about the Friends of Sunday Baroque and find out how to become one yourself by visiting our website, sundaybaroque.org, under the Contact tab. Morris Pleasure, who goes by Mo, is an American composer, singer, producer, and multi-instrumentalist. The Connecticut native is a former member of the band Earth, Wind, and Fire. He's also been musical director for Bette Midler and has worked with artists such as Ray Charles, Natalie Cole, Roberta Flack, and Michael Jackson, to name just a few. You can also find him on YouTube playing Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. I have known Mo Pleasure since we were classmates in the music department at the University of Connecticut a few years ago. At that time, he was studying piano, which was just one of his many musical instruments. Mo Pleasure is speaking with me today via Zoom about his remarkable talent and life as a musician. Hello, old friend.
Hey, it's so great to see you, Suzanne. How are you?
Great, great. How are you doing during COVID lockdown?
Yeah, I'm actually doing very well. I'm located in Wales, which has been great. I've been in the UK for the last 5 years, kind of doing a lot of projects and keeping busy here, doing live gigs and all that. And it's been interesting, COVID, because I've had to I was kind of actually prepared for it because I did do a lot of work online in terms of recording sessions, master classes, and all that kind of stuff worldwide. So I was pretty much prepared for it. But now we have live concerts that are streamed. Some of them are from my living room. Some of them are from venues, clubs, or even theaters. We did one from the Aberystwyth with Arts Center here, which is weird to play for 350 seater and with no one in the audience, and no applause or anything like that.
Yeah.
But we're weathering the storm. We're staying in. We're still staying busy. All's well.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. So there's an expression I love, and it is, the more you love music, the more music you love. And I think you are really the embodiment of that. You move easily within virtually any genre, and that is a huge reason why I wanted to chat with you about music. But let's go back to the beginning. You grew up in Guilford, Connecticut. What was your earliest introduction to music in your family? I know your dad was an educator, but he was also a singer, right?
Yes, and a really, really good one. And I started in New Haven before we moved to Guilford. And at 4 years old, I started on piano. And at our school, at our church, were giving lessons. So we were teachers from all the schools were music teachers were coming in and giving lessons to the kids pro bono. And my dad was a school principal at one of the high schools. My mom was a teacher at one of the schools. So I started at 4 years old playing piano. And my dad was, like I said, was a school principal, but also an incredible singer, classical, also spirituals and show tunes and all that. He loved all that stuff. And so I ended up being kind of his accompanist, so in church, I was playing in church, and I was doing recitals already, by 5, 6 years old. I started playing violin when I was about 6 or 7, and carried that on into Guilford, playing in the orchestras and all that kind of stuff. Even when I was in 5th grade, they would take some of us 5th graders and bring us up to the middle school, and we got to play with the middle school orchestra because they needed a thicker string section.
Right.
So there was that, and then just all the way through it, I just always felt that I kind of wanted to play all the instruments. So when I got into 7th grade, I went and saw this band called Earth, Wind, and Fire. And then I just had to play the bass, and I discovered this new music and soul music and all this and gospel and everything that went with it. So that kind of just changed my tact a little bit. When I got into UConn, I was still studying classical, but I also was playing in rock and roll bands and rockabilly bands and all that kind of stuff, as well as playing weddings and all that kind of stuff. So actually, when I knew you, I was already out there, as I'm sure you were. We were already doing professional work while we were in college.
Hmm. Hmm. So it sounds like, you just sort of it naturally progressed for you. Your talent sort
Yes.
of propelled you along and your interest propelled you along because it's not as though you had this one moment where you realized you'd fallen in love with music. It just seems like it was sort of part of you. Is that true?
Yes, it was always there. It was always there, and I always saw it all as music. I never thought of it as, well, I don't like country music or something like that. I always thought of it as a kind of a new adventure. Let me try this, and I play the trumpet as well. I started the trumpet in seventh grade, and I still play the trumpet. So I really enjoy the idea of making music, not just with different instruments, but using different parts of your being and your body to make the music.
Hmm.
Strumming or plucking a string or playing piano or using your air.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, I'm not a singer, so that's the only thing I didn't really learn how to do. Although I will do background vocals and on gigs and stuff. But so the idea of using your breath and and creating that sound through a trumpet or flugelhorn,
Hmm.
to me it's kind of elemental, like you know air, fire, water, earth, this kind of thing. So I kind of consider the bass being very grounding, and trumpet being air and all that kind of stuff. So
Hmm.
it's been a cool experience, and it's been the more I've learned, the more that I kind of really related to like spirituality and you know speaking without words and all this kind of stuff.
Right, right. And I think too, with such a breadth of familiarity and really you're immersed in these all these different genres. In your mind, do you actually segment them into separate genres? I mean, music is music, right?
Music is music, and especially now. I mean, because now people, and I always have, but there's always been mixes of all kinds together, and they happen accidentally and they happen on purpose, and in production and creating music now in studio, it's great to use all those things. And I also consider the instruments being, I kind of become that person. I become that trumpet player when I'm playing the horn. I become that
Yeah.
bass player. My facial expressions were different, and then my body moves in a slightly different way, and it's just really inherent to me. And that's not to say I'm the best musician by far on any instrument, but I'm just really grateful to have the experience of being able to to go kind of into that, almost like acting or something, kind of
Yeah.
going into that role and
Yeah.
enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, so you composed too. Do you remember, like, what was your first composition? I think you were pretty young guy.
Yeah, well, I was writing stuff in high school, even for my band, and even in eighth grade, I remember writing a kind of funky little song that I'd heard something. I remember going to Barbados. My parents traveled. We traveled a lot together, and I remember hearing a band like at the nightclub or while we were eating or something like that, and going. That inspired me to write this thing. And then I had this band in eighth grade, and we played it. And had two horn players, and so I had a little horn section and stuff, and it was this instrumental tune. And then when I went to a very good high school for music, Guilford High School, Ned Tarantino and John Thompson and Jack Thompson and all the teachers. They were great. We even had composition, so I was writing fugues, things like that, in the composition
Wow.
class. I wrote the song for our graduation
Wow.
that my dad actually sang because he used to sing at all our graduations on the green. And then so that was like kind of the start of songwriting for me, and I've just always done it. I got really serious about it in about 2001. I started kind of my own company, and I started my own album and started learning production and doing it out of my garage. And I would like invite all the kind of musicians that I was playing with on these tours to come up and record. So I had like the best musicians in the world coming through my little garage and recording, and learning how to produce and put all these sounds together, and write songs and all
Yeah.
that. And then that kind of gained my confidence. And now I do a lot of teaching of songwriting and mentoring at songwriting academies. So it's great, and I'm still always learning from even novices. I learn something from everybody that I write with. I do a lot of collaboration.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned teaching and mentoring because I think um, it doesn't surprise me to know that you're doing that. And you also had some very important teachers and mentors in your life, especially in your early days. Who are some of them? Tell us about some of them, and also, what is some of the best advice and guidance you've received from them?
Oh, wow. Great question, Suzanne. Great question. Well, I started out with a guy named Richard Pettyway when I was 4 years old. My parents took me in, and he said he didn't teach 4 year olds, so they said, well, just give him one lesson. If you still think you can't teach him, then that's fine. So my parents came back, picked me up, and I'd gone through the whole first book of stuff. And he said, you have to be very careful with him because he's got a great ear, and he was just copying what I was doing. He wasn't reading the music. So
Oh.
that was kind of when I think I discovered I had perfect pitch and all that. Then, all the way through it, I had, great violin teacher Bob Sills from Guilford, and I had Ann Clemens, who's now teaching, probably retired in Madison, all the way up through high school with Mr. Ned Tarantino, and Jack Thompson, as I said. And then, at UConn, we had Ellen Rowe, Neil Larrabee, Mr. Sieber. I had, Ivo Somer, who taught me a lot about theory, and, all Soloway, and all those teachers up there. Rick Rossi, I studied bass with. Back in high school, I started with trumpet with Richard Green, and then Don Cunningham. But I think that UConn, even though I was a bad student, because I was always doing bands outside of school, so I would be out till like 2, 3 in the morning playing. Sometimes I'd be up in New Hampshire,
Oh, wow.
playing ski lodges or something,
Right.
Vermont and stuff like that. I don't know if you remember John McAloney and
Mm.
Diane Bennick and all them. I was in a band with them, and I was learning just as much out of school as I was in school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was kind of cool. But those are people that I have to definitely credit a woman named Ramona Bruce, who died last year.
Mm.
But she moved into our house when I was in high school, and she's the one that took me to the Earth, Wind and Fire concert, and
Mm.
that literally was the defining point in my life. I guess if I had some advice, I keep my advice pretty simple, and that's basically follow your dream. There is a reason that you do have a dream to do what you do or want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and you are unique. I tell students this, that you're unique in what you do, and there's room in the business for everyone. Believe it or not, there is room for everyone that's willing to work hard, and always bet on yourself. So I keep it really really simple that way, and just I think a lot, especially now, there's a lot of distractions and there's a lot of things. You go on Facebook and everybody looks like they're doing great, and you're not, and all this kind of stuff, or this particular somebody that's in your music class seems to be doing a lot better than you for some reason,
Mm-hmm.
and you wonder if you should be more like them. I always say, really stick to your guns and just follow your heart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you have a couple of very timely projects on the front burner right now. You've got a solo recording being released in the summer of
Yes,
2021, and
yes,
then you've got this charity single. Do you want to talk a little bit about those projects?
yes, yes, yes. Well, this is my second offering as a solo artist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And I'm not sure what I'm going to call the album yet. My first album was called Elements of Pleasure for several reasons. One being the thing I was saying about the elements, in terms of music and, life for that matter, but also the fact, kind of continuing the Earth, Wind, and Fire theme. Um, my company's called, my label's called Water Sign. So, like, water is kind of my element. And um, so I'm kind of like use that for marketing and such. Continuation of Earth, Wind, and Fire onto water and all that. So I'm thinking of calling it Mo Elements of Pleasure, but it's like kind of the same way I did my first one. I have a lot of songs that have guest artists. Since I'm not a singer, I have the great Roberta Flack on one of the tracks. I've got Ollie Woodson from the Temptations, who died recently, but one of the last things he did was sing on my album. Great Philip Bailey from Earth, Wind, and Fire singing lead on one of my tracks, and so on. So it's like a journey. I really like the old Earth, Wind, and Fire, not to keep mentioning them. I like those albums and albums of the 70s because they would be put the record on, sit down, close your eyes, and take the whole journey from front to back. even interludes, like little 30-second, 1 minute pieces that
Hmm.
kind of cleanse your palate and take you on to the next thing. So my albums are kind of in that vein.
Hmm.
The charity single is called "We Are One," and that's a song that I wrote with Laurie Harris, and it's kind of a children's theme actually, but very much like "We Are the World," like the Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie
Hmm.
um, charity single for USA for Africa.
Hmm.
So it's where each verse is split up by different artists. And in my case, we've got Michael McDonald, we've got Joss Stone, Alita Adams, and since the single's being released over here, this version has a bunch of UK artists on it, like the great Peter Andre and Marisha Wallace, and
Hmm.
so on. So I'm excited about that. We're releasing that in June, and we're going to do a streaming concert for the release.
Oh, that's cool.
The charity actually we're still kind of figuring out, but at this point, I'm really interested in helping musicians and creatives, not just with their money, but also with mental wellness and
Hmm.
such. I've been working with this organization over here called The Haven for a
Hmm.
while, and they made me an ambassador, and uh, that is an organization that helps creatives through mental wellness and other problems.
Hmm. That's great. The Haven. Okay. Okay.
TheHavenLondon.com.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. So, as you mentioned, COVID-19 really has affected everyone all over the world, of course, and musicians have faced particular challenges. It's also been a time of some pretty significant social upheaval in this country, especially. We're reckoning with some very ugly realities, and
Yeah.
particularly concerning race. Would you share your thoughts, your perspective on that? As a person who grew up in Connecticut, as someone who's worked his way up through the world of music, as someone who now lives abroad, you have maybe a different citizen of the world perspective as well as, your own
Sure.
personal perspective.
Sure, yeah, Suzanne. Well, I'm from the '60s. I'm born in the '60s, so even the black vote didn't even happen until '65, '66. I completely remember Martin Luther King. My parents marched with the March on Washington. They
Mm.
were very famous. I Have a Dream speech. They were actually there. And my parents are from Louisiana, so it's been an interesting life because I was always going down to the deep south
Mm.
to visit my grandparents, twice a year or whatever. We drive down there. And, it was even such that as we were driving, as we got into the south, we had to be very careful because we couldn't stay at hotels
Mm.
and this kind of thing. And I remember getting down to down to my granddad and who was a councilman in the town, first black councilman,
Mm-hmm.
and he going to a water fountain and seeing that there was colored and white water fountain, and I didn't really register with me because I grew up in Guilford, Connecticut, so I was in a 99% white town where my father was a school principal. So it was
Yeah.
kind of like, and most of my friends were white. Of course, I had black friends and other colors too from New Haven. But this whole thing about, that this is, um, now it's racism and all the things that go with it is kind of rearing its ugly head again. But the truth of it is, when you grow up black in America, you do realize that it's there at all times. And you're always kind of, looking over your shoulder. You're always like wondering exactly where you are, especially, I'm on the road all the time. So, and it's an international thing. It's not just an American thing,
Right.
racism and all the things that go with it. So you have to be careful. I'm really, um, really hurt by some of the things that are happening in the United States now. But at the same time, I think it's something that we have to go through so that people get a certain understanding of what's really going on. And then the same thing as I tour the world and have for 35 years. Um, there are different kinds of racism. I've been to South Africa. I've been to parts of South America, and Brazil, and even here in the UK. There is racism, but sometimes it's rooted in something that's different. Japan,
Mm-hmm.
I have a daughter that's Japanese, and she's experienced it there because she's black and Japanese.
Mm.
Um, But at the same time, I think that it makes us push ourselves a little bit harder and, strive to be the best in a lot of situations just because we were taught that we need to be the best in order to succeed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In classical music, I think especially, we're really trying to broaden the audience. We're trying to broaden the repertory. We're trying to encourage and welcome more people to the stage. And the world of classical music, especially, has been a pretty closed club.
Yes,
From the opportunities for all kids to learn music at an early age, right up through the opportunities to play in orchestras and that sort of thing, and frankly, the accessibility and the comfort of just being in the audience if you're not in that closed club.
sure, sure.
So, as you think back on your experiences, especially, do you have any thoughts or suggestions on how the pursuit of music could be more inclusive, maybe more welcoming, maybe more encouraging to all people?
Absolutely, Suzanne. And and it doesn't just stop there. I mean, it goes into the executive level positions,
Hmm.
in music and in, popular music and jazz and everything else too. Like, I mean, it's like everything else. Even say jazz has changed. I watched it change a lot to become smooth jazz and less inclusive of black musicians as artists, even for that. Um, then not to even mention like record company executives and such, and now that we're kind of into the everything is digital and it's a digital world. That term of what a record executive is a lot different than it used to be back in the 70s.
Right.
At least in the 70s they were maybe a little bit more older. Maybe they knew a little bit about what real music, or how to even play it, that kind of thing. Well, now it's a numbers game, and there's certain people are allowed in and certain people aren't allowed in. I've experienced it myself, even as a sideman. Someone has a vision of what their band looks like, and I just don't fit into it. And it might not even be racism. It might be ageism. It might be, just I just didn't fit in for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just that way. Um, I think we really do need to be a lot more inclusive, and I think especially for kids, like you're saying, and the executive level.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
we're in an independent age now as far as music, labels and ways of putting out music. So I think it's a good time for that to happen because um, there's a lot of us that are able to like start our own enterprises, and I think I encourage that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. That definitely does make a difference. But I just think back too to how you made a point of saying that you had this opportunity through church to have piano lessons, and
Yes.
you were able to go to this great school that had such a great music program, and it's I hope for a future where every kid has access to that.
Absolutely. I had just these incredible parents, and they knew. My dad went to Yale Divinity School, and my mother was teaching high school when she was 16 years old,
Wow.
and I think that they knew that to really prepare me and to give me every opportunity. They had sent me on a trip over here from my to England and Wales when I was 15 years old. So not only had I seen almost every state in the United States from just our trips,
Right.
I actually had been overseas
Uh-huh.
on a hiking trip. So they were always opening me up to new opportunities and showing me that there was nothing that I couldn't do. And I
Hmm.
think that's important. The parenting part of it is very important as well.
Sure, sure, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I have been speaking via Zoom with Mo Pleasure, and he is a multi talented, multi instrumentalist with an international career. And Mo, it was really fun catching up with you. Thank you.
Oh, likewise, Suzanne. Please have me back sometime. I really had a great time.
Will
Thank you.
do.